Hey everyone, and welcome. We're diving into a topic today that is especially relevant if you're prepping for those UPSC exams.
Especially the mains.
You got it, the mains exams.
It's one that's been making headlines and sparking a lot of debate.
We're talking about the Uniform Civil Code.
The UCC.
Yeah, UCC. It's kind of a big deal.
It really is, and to fully understand it, we have to look beyond those attention-grabbing headlines and dive into the details.
Absolutely, and to give you all a sense of what we're dealing with, some recent research found that less than 5%.
5%?
Yes, 5% of Indian families surveyed had someone who married outside of their religion.
That's a really small number, and it highlights a key issue at the heart of the UCC debate.
Exactly, and today we're going to explore just that.
We'll be looking at the challenges interfaith couples face in India, how much the state can be involved in personal relationships.
And the big picture.
Right, the implications for individual rights, and what this means for India as a whole.
So let's jump right in. Imagine you're in India and you fall in love with someone from a different faith.
It happens.
Of course, love knows no bounds, right? But what kind of roadblocks might you encounter? Especially now, with the UCC and those anti-conversion laws gaining momentum.
It's a reality many young Indians face.
I bet.
Even before the UCC, interfaith couples already faced hurdles.
Oh, yeah.
The Special Marriage Act of 1954.
That's the one that's supposed to make it easier, right?
It is, but it actually has this 30-day public notice period.
Wait, a whole month?
Yes, couples have to publicly announce their intention to marry for a full month.
So that's a month of potential scrutiny and pressure from families.
And communities, absolutely.
Wow, I could see how that could be a recipe for disaster.
It creates a very vulnerable period for couples.
Vulnerable how?
Well, the Hindu reports this waiting period can actually embolden vigilante groups who might use this information.
To target couples.
Exactly.
That's terrifying.
Is a serious concern.
And it's not just about marriage, is it? There are those anti-conversion laws in states like Uttar Pradesh.
Uttarakhand, Rajasthan.
Right, those add another layer of complexity to the whole issue.
Absolutely. These laws create so many bureaucratic obstacles.
Like what?
Well, think mandatory declarations, waiting periods. You even need approval from district magistrates just to get married.
Wow, that's a lot of red tape just to be with the person you love.
It is.
And it's not just hypothetical. These laws are having a real impact.
They are. The Hindu actually reported a pretty shocking statistic from Uttar Pradesh.
What was that?
Out of 101 police complaints filed against Christians under the anti-conversion law,
Yeah.
63 were filed by vigilante groups.
Not even family members.
Not family members, no, which really raises concerns about who is driving these complaints and their motivations.
It's really scary to think that love is becoming this bureaucratic nightmare.
It's a valid concern.
And it makes you think about the state's role in all of this.
It does.
But it's not just marriage that's being impacted, is it? The UCC seems to be extending its reach into less formal relationships as well.
You're right. The UCC, as it stands right now, requires the registration of live-in relationships.
Really? Even if you're not officially married?
Yes, even then.
Wow. And I'm guessing it's not a simple process.
Not at all.
How so?
According to the Hindu, it involves a 16-page application.
16 pages.
16 pages, plus identity proofs, approvals from religious leaders, notifications to
It
families.
sounds like a lot.
It's a very long and intrusive process.
What happens if you just don't do it?
There are consequences for non-compliance.
Yeah.
You could face up to 6 months in prison and a fine of $25,000.
So you could go to jail for choosing to live with someone without registering.
That's the reality of it.
It seems extreme.
It does raise concerns about whether the state is overreaching into the personal lives of citizens.
Yeah, it feels like we're moving towards a system where the state has a say in every aspect of our personal life.
It's a valid concern, and it's playing out in real time.
How so?
In Uttarakhand.
Where the UCC has been implemented.
Right. The Hindu reports that only one couple,
Just one.
yes, only one has successfully registered their live-in relationship.
I'm not surprised.
Many others have had to go to the high court to avoid those penalties.
So it's not just a theoretical concern.
It's a real issue couples are dealing with right now.
And when we look at the challenges faced by interfaith, couples wanting to get married, and those choosing live-in relationships.
It does seem like a pattern is emerging.
Definitely.
A pattern of state overreach into personal choices.
Exactly. And that brings us to a much larger conversation.
It does.
What role should religion and the state play in personal relationships in a country like India?
It's a fundamental question.
Especially with the UCC and its requirements for religious certification and family notifications.
It seems to blur the lines between personal choice and state involvement.
And that's a conversation we need to have.
Absolutely, especially considering the potential challenges it poses for those in interfaith relationships.
We've covered a lot of ground already, and this is all so fascinating.
It is.
I can already see how this could come up in both prelims and mains.
Oh, definitely.
Should we take a closer look at how all this specifically impacts women?
Absolutely. That's a crucial aspect of this whole debate. One of the biggest concerns with the UCC, especially for women,
Yeah.
is the potential for increased control and coercion from families.
That's a scary thought.
It is.
Yeah.
And the Hindu really highlights how these new regulations...
One's about family notifications.
Exactly. Those can make women very vulnerable.
How so?
Well, we already know about honor-based violence and the pressure women face to marry within their community.
It's a huge problem.
Now, imagine a woman wants to marry someone outside her religion or caste.
And her family is notified.
It could expose her to so much pressure, even threats.
It's like the law is putting some individuals at even greater risk.
That's the concern.
Instead of creating equality, it might actually do the opposite.
Exactly, and it's not just about physical safety. The Hindu also pointed out how these patriarchal narratives often portray women in interfaith relationships as victims.
Like they're being manipulated or something.
Exactly, as if they can't make their own choices.
They're taking away their agency completely.
And it reinforces this dangerous stereotype that women need to be protected.
By their families or the state?
Right, instead of being trusted to make their own decisions.
It's really concerning when you think about what this could mean for women's rights in India.
Absolutely, it's a complex issue.
And what I'm sure UPSC examiners will be watching closely.
Oh, definitely. Aspirants need to be ready to analyze this from all angles, not just the legal aspects, but the social and ethical ones too.
Oh, okay. So beyond the individual impact,
Yeah.
what about the potential consequences of the UCC for Indian society as a whole?
It's a big question.
We talked about vigilantism, but are there other concerns?
Definitely one major concern is the potential for increased social segregation.
But isn't the UCC supposed to be a unifying force?
That's how it's often presented, but some critics argue it could actually make divisions in Indian society even worse.
How so? I mean, India is known for its diversity.
It has this incredibly rich tapestry of cultures, religions, and traditions.
And the UCC wants to make everything uniform.
That's the tension, right? Personal laws have always reflected this diversity.
So imposing a uniform code, especially on sensitive personal matters,
It could be seen as trying to erase those differences.
like forcing everyone into the same mold.
Exactly, and that could lead to resentment, resistance, maybe even alienation among certain communities.
And wouldn't that contradict the very idea of India as a secular and pluralistic nation?
That's the argument some critics are making.
It's fascinating how something aimed at creating unity could actually lead to more division.
And potentially even international criticism.
It really highlights the complexity of this issue
It does.
and the need for a really nuanced and sensitive approach.
One that balances the desire for legal uniformity with the need to protect diversity and individual freedoms.
This whole conversation brings up a really fundamental question
It does.
about the balance of power between the state and the individual in modern India.
Where do we draw the line? That's the crux of it.
To what extent should the state be involved in personal matters, even if it's trying to promote social order?
It's a tough question, and there's no easy answer.
On one hand, you could argue that a uniform civil code would simplify things,
And ensure equality for everyone.
regardless of their religious beliefs.
That's the goal.
But then you have these concerns about state overreach, the erosion of personal freedoms.
And the potential for further marginalizing certain communities.
That's a real dilemma.
It is. And it's one that UPSC aspirants need to be prepared to grapple with.
For sure, the examiners will be looking for evidence of critical thinking and a deep understanding of these arguments.
Absolutely. Being able to articulate a well-reasoned and nuanced perspective.
Okay, so for our listeners prepping for those UPSC exams,
Yes.
how should they approach a potential essay question on the UCC?
Well, first of all, it's crucial to show a comprehensive understanding of the UCC.
What does that mean?
It means knowing the historical context, the rationale behind it, the potential ramifications for both individuals and society.
So not just defining the UCC, but really digging into the complexities.
Exactly. Use relevant case studies, legal precedents, even expert opinions to back up your arguments.
Show them you've done your research.
Exactly. You could even bring up how other countries have implemented uniform civil codes.
Analyze what worked, what didn't.
Exactly. It's about showing that you've really thought this through and can engage with the issue on multiple levels.
Demonstrate that you understand the potential for discrimination, the need to protect minority rights.
That balance between individual freedom and state control.
A well-rounded essay should acknowledge both the pros and cons of the UCC.
And remember, the UPSC examiners want to see critical, independent thinking.
So don't be afraid to express your own opinion.
As long as it's well-reasoned and backed up by evidence.
Show them you can be a thoughtful, effective policymaker, not just someone who can memorize facts.
That's the key. And remember,
Yeah.
this isn't just about acing an exam. It's about understanding an issue that could shape the future of India.
And speaking of the future, there's one more layer to this debate we need to address.
What's that?
It's a concern that's been raised by a lot of critics of the UCC.
You mean the potential impact on India's standing on the global stage?
Well, that, but also the potential for unintended consequences.
Like what?
How this might affect India's social fabric in ways we haven't even thought of yet. We've talked about potential social divisions and international criticism, but what about those unintended consequences?
Yeah, those unforeseen issues that might pop up when you try to impose uniformity on such a diverse country.
Exactly. It's something that worries me.
And it worries a lot of the UCC's critics, too.
What kinds of things are they talking about?
Well, the Hindu brought up a really interesting point.
What was that?
They talked about how codifying personal laws might actually end up making existing social hierarchies even stronger.
So instead of creating a level playing field?
It might just solidify existing inequalities.
Wow, so some groups who are already marginalized
They might find themselves even more disadvantaged.
by a system that doesn't really consider their specific needs.
Exactly.
It's like those best intentions paving the road to, well, not so great outcomes.
It happened.
It's definitely something UPSC aspirants need to think about.
It really shows how important it is to understand the complexities of Indian society,
And to be careful when it comes to legal reform.
sensitive to those potential impacts.
Well, this whole conversation has been incredibly insightful.
It has.
I can definitely see why the UCC is such a hot topic.
It's a big deal with huge implications for India.
And I bet it'll come up in the UPSC exams.
Oh, for sure. It touches on so many fundamental questions.
About individual rights, state power, the fabric of Indian society.
It's something people will be talking about for years to come.
So for our listeners getting ready for those exams,
Yeah.
what are the key takeaways they should remember about the UCC?
I think the most important thing is to really grasp the arguments on both sides.
For and against.
Exactly. You need to understand the historical context, the goals, the potential benefits.
So not just criticizing it.
No, you have to understand why people support it too.
Show that you've considered all sides.
Present a balanced and nuanced view.
Acknowledge the good and the bad.
Exactly.
It's about showing that you can think objectively.
And arrive at well-informed conclusions.
And don't forget about how the UCC could impact different groups in India.
Women, religious minorities, different socioeconomic groups.
It's not just a theoretical debate.
These are real people's lives we're talking about.
Exactly.
And remember, the UPSC is looking for those critical, independent thinkers.
So don't be afraid to share your own opinion.
As long as you can back it up.
With evidence and reasoning.
Right. Show them you've got what it takes to be a thoughtful, effective policymaker.
Someone who can handle tough questions and make informed decisions.
That's it.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have. This deep dive has been really fascinating.
It has, and a big thank you to The Hindu for their reporting on this issue.
It's a must-read for anyone preparing for the UPSC.
For sure.
They do a great job of covering these complex topics.
And to our listeners, we encourage you to explore the source material and form your own opinions.
This is an ongoing discussion, and we want to hear from you.
Let us know your thoughts, your questions, anything you're wondering about in the comments.
We're always happy to continue the conversation.
And if you found this deep dive helpful,
don't forget to like and subscribe.
For more insightful analyses on current affairs, all those topics you need to know for the UPSC exam.
We're here to help you navigate those complexities.
And to equip you with the knowledge you need to ace those exams and beyond.
Happy studying, everyone.
Until next time.